like to call the meeting to order. Welcome to the Little Rock Planning Commission. I'd like to have the staff call the roll, please.
Chairman Latour.
Here.
Commissioner Berry.
Here.
Commissioner Benton.
Here.
Commissioner Brock.
Here.
Commissioner Brooks.
Here.
Commissioner Hamilton. Commissioner Hart.
Here.
Commissioner Haynes. Commissioner Rahman.
Here.
Commissioner Vogel. And Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, sir. Commissioners, you've been provided with the minutes of the last meeting. Is there a motion in order?
I move for approval of the minutes of the November 21st meeting.
Is there a second? Moved and second, approve the minutes of the last meeting. All in favor? If you're in favor, please raise your hand. If you're opposed, raise your hand. Please note Commissioner Hamilton has arrived. Okay, before we do the consent agenda, once a year we have to elect officers. Officers being chairman and vice chairman. So, floor is open.
Is the floor open for nominations, Mr. Chair? Is the floor open for nominations?
Yes.
Okay. I'd like to move to nominate Paul Latour as chair to continue a second year.
Second.
Motion and second. Anybody else?
I move to close the nominations.
If you're in favor of me, raise your hand. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Vice Chairman.
Also moved for the nomination of Scott Hamilton as vice chairman.
I second.
I'd second.
I second.
Any other discussion? If you're in favor of Scott, raise your hand.
Vote for myself.
If you're not, congratulations. We voted for ourselves.
All right.
It carried. Would you take us through the consent agenda, please, sir?
The consent agenda for the January 9th, 2020 Little Rock Planning Commission. Consent withdrawal item B, Z-7667-A, the Highway 10 Business Park Revised Short Form PCD, located at 14410 Cantrell Road. A request to withdraw this item without prejudice was received by staff on December 23rd, 2019. Staff recommends approval of the withdrawal request. Consent deferral items. Item C, file Z-9466, Canis Office Building Short Form PCD, located at 17201 Canis Road. On December 29, 2019, a deferral of this item to the February 2020 meeting was requested by the applicant. Staff recommends approval of the deferral request. Item D, file number Z-9467, Artist Place 2019, short form PRD, located at the northeast corner of the intersection of Rock Street and East 10th Street. Staff received a request from the applicant on December 19, 2019, to defer this item to the February 20th, 2020 meeting. Staff recommends approval of the deferral request. Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. We have a correction. Correction on that. That will be deferred until April 2nd, 2020, not the February 20th. Item 2, file S-1809-B.
We'll go on regular agenda.
We have a Scrivener's error in the staff report on this. Therefore, at the advice of our attorneys, we are going to defer this item until the February 20th, 2020 meeting in order to make that correction so that everybody's working off the same information. So that will be a deferral item. Staff recommends approval of that deferral. Item number 9, file Z-9468, C-Tract number 13, Alive, short form PDR, located at 1800 Valentine Street on December 27, 2019. The applicant requested a deferral of the item to the February 20th, 2020 meeting. Staff recommends approval of the deferral. Item 10, the O'Reilly file Z-9479, the O'Reilly Senior Living Facility long form POD located northwest of the intersection of Chenal Valley Drive and Rawling Road. On December 30th, 2019, the applicant informed staff the required notification was not completed in a timely fashion. Therefore, this item must be deferred to the February 20th, 2020 meeting. Staff recommends approval of the deferral to the February 20th, 2020 meeting. Item number 12, file number Z-9481, the Allman short form PDR, located at 1523 Wolf Street. On December 27th, 2019, the applicant informed staff the required notification was not completed in a timely fashion. Therefore, this item must be deferred to the February 20th, 2020 meeting. Staff recommends approval of the deferral to the February 20, 2020 meeting. The consent approval items. Item number 1, file S-1221-K, Chenal Valley Phase 18I, revised preliminary plat located south of Shalamont Drive between Shalamont Place and Shalane Drive. Staff recommends approval of the proposed preliminary plat and variances subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F and the staff analysis in the agenda staff report. Item 3, file S-1866, Mondi Subdivision, located at 6702 Shaner Circle. Staff recommends approval of the proposed plat and variances subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F and the staff analysis in the agenda staff report. Staff also recommends approval of the waiver to the boundary street improvements. Item 4, file S-1867, the Heights at Shackelford preliminary plat and site plan review located west of Shackelford Road between Colonel Glen Road and West 36th Street. Staff recommends approval of the preliminary plat, site plan, and variance subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the agenda staff report. Item 5, file Z-3117-F, 7415 Colonel Glen revised short form PCD located at 7415 Colonel Glen Road. Staff recommends approval of the request to revise the PCD for the property subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F and the staff analysis of the agenda staff report. Item 6, file Z-5239-I, Our House, short form PDO, located at 302 East Roosevelt Road. Staff recommends approval of the request to rezone the property to POD subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the staff analysis and the staff analysis in the agenda staff report. Item number 7, file Z-6912-A, Gray short form POD revocation, located at 2001 North Arthur Street. Staff recommends approval of the POD revocation request. Item 11, file number Z-9480, Integrated Psych Solutions short form POD, located at 218 North McKinley Street. Staff recommends approval of the requested revised POD subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F and the staff analysis in the agenda staff report. And staff recommends approval of a deferral of sidewalk installation until Phase 2 building expansion. Item 13, file Z-9482, 17007 Cantrell Road, short form POD, located at 17007 Cantrell Road. Staff recommends approval of the request to rezone the property to POD, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F, and the staff analysis in the agenda staff report. Item 14, file Z-9483, 7821 Doyle Springs Road, short form PID, located at 7821 Doyle Springs Road. Staff recommends approval of the PID subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F, and the staff analysis in the agenda staff report. Item 15, File A-336, Bear Den annexation to the city of Little Rock, approximately 80 acres of land located north of Chenal Drive at Gordon Road, north of the Germain and Solange neighborhood of Chenal. Staff recommends approval of that annexation.
The next item is amendments to our codes that was presented to y'all. These amendments, initially when it started, is the city's executive administration office asked city staff to look at all of our development codes as it relates to the city, and just look at what's happening in other cities, municipalities around the region. With that, we investigated cities like Kansas City, Dallas, Memphis, and we looked at what they were doing in their process. And in doing so, we looked at all the codes and modified some of the revisions, and some of them are because we have some duplicity in regards to some standards, like some curbs that are in the codes that we also have in standard details that's needed. The majority of what you have seen in there in the code revisions is just replacement of as designated by the city manager to as designated by the mayor pursuant to the ordinance that was passed for his expanded authority. Some of the changes that would affect the planning commission that y'all have seen is, and the majority of the municipalities looked at the site plan review that y'all currently have in some of the specific zonings. We're looking to remove those unless there is variances that are requested. So essentially, if they meet the code requirements as set, for just like we do with plats and stuff, that could be handled at staff level that goes through. But if there's a variance to be sought, then they would be brought before the planning commission or appropriate board associated with that. And then also the issuance of the review for the multiple building site plan review. The same point on that one is that if it meets all the codes and the setbacks, if you're looking at a big development that has multiple buildings and they meet all the setbacks required in our other codes, like our building setbacks and adjoining, unless there's a variance, then the commission would not come before the commission for review. Other areas, and I won't go through all the little details, the bigger ones are, we're trying to get a little bit more dense in our development. So one of the key subdivision revisions is we're looking to reduce the minimum lot width to 50 foot instead of, I believe, the 60 on the short minimum one. And then also reduce the square footage. In looking at that, we did receive a comment and that we're looking at adding in before it goes to the board in that 50-foot width to ensure that the lot does not stretch out. That minimum that we still have was 7,000 square feet of the lot, so we're looking to reduce that down to 6,000 square feet, which would keep it in line with that minimum width that we're looking at. And in the research, I wanted to point out that I also found a original report that was done back in 1986 when the same staff, planning and development, was called a different department then, had a lot more duties in there. Comprehensive planning was tasked with essentially the same type of duties to kind of look at the codes, and a city needs to do that every so often so it doesn't get old or antiquated, because new technologies come in. And so in 1986 they did the study, and some of the same things were brought up in the stuff that we've heard about the process of the timeline of making it easier, and this transition was a key point because this was the transition that really went from all paper to starting to install the first computers in that department, to go through there. And some of that report that come out of what the Planning Commission sees now is, in that older report, there was a recommendation at that time to take the conditional use permit review out of the board's action and place it down in the Planning Commission's action. So that was the time that was presented to be adopted for that. So that's what this is. This is a relooking at our codes to see how we can streamline this a little bit in the process, still adhere to what the intent is of the codes, of adhering to the ordinances and the setbacks that's associated with it, but also trying to help this process. And we've done this through this, and you've heard me talk about it before, this one-stop permitting process, so that we can try to streamline it, be a little bit more digital, and apply for it all online. So with that, if there's any questions specifically that y'all might have on any particular revisions to the ordinance, your review, and y'all are more than welcome to send comments afterwards. This is a recommendation to the board. The board will be the acting body on this to look at, and there may be revisions to it from that point. If there's anything major, we would make sure to notify the people and bring it back to this planning commission if there's anything major changed on that.
Okay. Commissioners, any questions on the items that he just discussed? Alex, this is extremely trivial, but on item 15, it's Chenal Valley Drive, not Chenal Drive. And with that correction, you've heard the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve it?
Yes, Chairman Latour, I move that we approve the consent agenda, including all staff comments and conditions.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded, approve the consent agenda. If you're in favor, raise your hand. If you're not, same deal. Consent agenda is approved. If your item was called on any of the above items, you're welcome to stay, but you're equally welcome to go. If you were on item 2, which is the Henderson Road, it's been deferred till February, I guess, February 20th. We have 2 new commissioners. I just would like to recognize Commissioner Brooks and Commissioner Benton, Dr. Benton. Well, pardon me, welcome to the commission. For some reason I can't talk, but that may be a godsend. We have 2 items on the regular agenda. First, we'll do item A. If you'll take us through item A, please, sir.
Item A this evening is file S-1859. This is the Quick Trip Site Plan Review, which is located southwest of the intersection of Bass Pro Parkway and Otter Creek Road. The developer is Daniel Chambers, representing the Quick Trip Corporation out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And this is a 15.77 acre property located in Ward 7. Currently it is zoned C4, and they are also seeking 3 variances. One would be to sections 30-43 and 31-210 regarding driveway locations and widths. Second would be section 15-97, the vehicular area interior landscaping, and 15-98, the building area perimeter landscaping. This is a vacant undeveloped tract located south of Otter Creek Road, west of Bass Pro Parkway. It's largely paved, was previously used for a trucking operation. It does also abut the I-30 frontage road. To the northwest is the recently developed commercial center anchored by the Bass Pro and the outlets of Little Rock. This use, which is a fueling center, is a permitted use within the C4 district. Multiple buildings are proposed on the site, so therefore it falls as a site plan review by the Planning Commission. The applicant proposes to develop the Travel Plaza fueling station. It is located near the major traffic routes, making it desirable for the developer to bring this use to the property. Should this request be approved, the existing pavement would be removed, and any utility service lines not necessary for the development would also be removed during site preparation. The new development would be connected to each of the abutting roadways via 5 driveways. That's 5 total, not 5 on each road. The new building to be constructed with this development would be approximately 8,292 square feet in area. There would also be a trash pad and an enclosure with that, the fuel pumps and canopy, as well as a truck scale. Signs on the site would include entrance drives and freestanding pole signs. So the background on this at the subdivision committee, we had the technical review comments on that, and they revised their site plan, provided us comments to the pertinent issues that were brought up at that point. They have provided a specific signage plan that would have a high-rise pole located near the intersection of Bass Pro Parkway and the frontage road for Interstate 30. On the plan, it was indicated to be 46 feet in height and 171 square feet in area. The applicant has indicated this sign would comply with the maximum allowed height and area freestanding in commercial districts, being 36 feet in height and 160 square feet in area, with the possibility of additional height being allowed under Section 36-557B, whereby the height of a ground-mounted sign, on-premise sign, located on property adjacent to and contiguous with an expressway or freeway may be measured from the elevation of the center line of the traffic lanes, which would exclude the frontage roads adjacent to the subject property. A second pole sign with a height of 35 feet is proposed on the edge of the western drive that would connect to Otter Creek Road. This sign would be 134 square feet in area. All the building signage would be in compliance with the commercial building standards, and the various directional signs would be placed adjacent to the access drives to provide guidance on what services are available on the site, and also to assist in separating automobile and semi-truck traffic on and around the site. Sidewalks and appropriate access ramps have been added to the site plan, would be constructed along Otter Creek Road to the west property line in compliance with the city standards as well as the master street plan. A grading permit would be obtained prior to any land clearance or grading activities. Stormwater detention would be provided on site. The detention pond would be along the western edge of the property. Any specifics plans would be finalized during the permitting and approval process. The access drives, 2 drives are proposed to connect to the interstate frontage road. They're about 40 feet in width, and they're likely to be used by semi-trucks, requiring the additional width to accommodate the turning widths for those trucks. The connections to the fronting road are existing, would be improved with this development. 1 drive is proposed to extend to Bass Pro Parkway. This would be a right-in, right-out driveway, would also have a truck-mountable island to enforce those movements. 2 drives are proposed for Otter Creek Road. The drive closer to the intersection with Bass Pro Drive has been shifted west to remove it from the right-hand turn lane for vehicles that would be turning from Otter Creek Road onto Bass Pro Parkway. This drive must be permitted by the Department of Transportation on this, and I will leave it to the applicant to bring up the discussions that they've had with the Transportation Department on that matter so they can get that information to you accurately. The second driveway is less than 150 feet from the property line and requires a variance. However, that drive does line up with the driveway to the Love's Truck Stop located north of Otter Creek. Directional signs, again, would advise motorists left turns are not permitted onto the frontage road. For that, the street landscape buffers have been improved on the revised plan to now provide the full width required by the ordinance, and the landscape, the perimeter landscape for the vehicular areas abutting the adjoining properties and rights of way has also been revised for compliance. The variance is requested for the landscaping for the interior of the parking area. The requirement is for 8% of the vehicular area to be green space. Again, there will be larger vehicles using this site, therefore they must have sufficient area for these vehicles to circulate. It does not provide that. However, there are landscape buffers within the area for automobile use, as well as there are buffer extensions coming into the semi-truck area parking that get to the intent of what that requirement would be. And then secondly, a variance is requested for landscaping around the building. Both of those variances would require approval by the City Beautiful Commission. It does appear to staff that all of their technical issues have been addressed. Staff is supportive of the use of this property as proposed, as well as the applicant has modified this site plan to balance their operational requirements regarding the use of the site as a travel plaza fueling center with those technical standards that are found in the various city codes. Staff does recommend approval of the site plan, subject to compliance with the comments and conditions outlined in paragraphs D, E, and F of the staff agenda report, and approval of the variances to allow the driveways as shown, subject to approval by the Arkansas Department of Transportation.
Commissioner Brock, did you have any comments?
I'd like to hear about the Highway Department approval. Disapproval, approval as far as your driveways?
Yes, sir. As Alex stated, my name is Daniel Chambers. I work for Quick Trip Corporation. I office out of 4705 South 129th Avenue, Tulsa, Oklahoma. We've been working with the DOT on, along with the city concurrently on our plan because a couple of the drives are within the DOT right-of-way. And we heard back, we got some initial comments back from them, I think in October, November, and we revised our site plan a little bit when we resubmitted to the city. We heard back from them today, and they asked that the drive on Otter Creek be shifted a little bit to the west to get it a little bit further away from the intersection and out of the right turn lane, as Alex had indicated. Talked with Mark today, and he said that if we shifted it, he wanted to see it, but he felt that he was good with what we had proposed.
Okay. I have some problems with it. The road going, Otter Creek Road, where Otter Creek Road turns to get onto the interstate, every afternoon, it is a booger. It's the worst I've ever seen, and I don't know anything you can do about it. I would love to see you do something before you build, but I'm sure you're not going to. That's really all I've got. I'm just concerned about that road.
Absolutely, it's a fair concern, and that's why we've been working with the city staff. We revised our site plan very significantly from when we first came in here to try to alleviate any of those concerns and the congestion and just allow the safe operation of the vehicles to get in and out of the facility, as well as accommodate the existing traveling public that's on the roads now.
Okay. I'm going to vote against it, but I just want you to know why.
I
Okay.
appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you.
for now. Troy Leahy has a comment he'd like to make.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Troy Leahy, and members of staff and the city staff. I'm not necessarily opposed to the building and their operation inside, but I am very much opposed to the driveway layout. And I have been in this company's facilities in the Midwestern United States over the past several years, and they have a pretty good operation. But the in and out on the loop coming off of I-30 going into Bass Pro, they need to remove that completely. That's going to be nothing but an accident place. But I go through that pretty often, at least once a week and sometimes 3 and 4 times a week. And I don't believe people are going to adhere to that in and out, right in, right out. If they're going left or traveling to Bass Pro and they want to turn in there on a sudden decide to, they're going in there. And the same way coming out going west on Otter Creek Road, they're going to do a left. I live out there in the area, drive it all the time, and I know how the people out there drive. Now, the other one is the driveway they're talking about on Otter Creek Road. It's the same thing over there. They don't necessarily need a right in, right out there. They've already got a driveway down on the edge of their property. But it's going to be the same thing over there, people going in there and suddenly change their mind, want to go someplace else. And they have the same problem in Dallas. I was on their ground on their site in Dallas last month, and it's the same problem down there. It looked like somebody jumped up in a store and hollered, go, and they just go every direction. They don't have much organization about it. Now, I'm opposed to all those driveways. I'm not necessarily opposed to the business going in there, but they need to get those driveways cut way down. They only need 3. Look how many Bass Pro have. They only have 3 or 4. And they've got that big truck operation in there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Leahy. Commissioners, you got any questions or comments?
Staff, the traffic concerns, I know you guys were supportive of it. What was the deal with the traffic that Troy and the other gentleman brought up about the traffic over there on your approval? Did you guys have any issues with that? Or how did you guys address the issues?
Well, if, while Mr. Hood comes up to kind of address more of the traffic stuff, or Vince, if he wants to, I can talk more about the initial site plan that was submitted and our concerns that was brought in. And we did look at Otter Creek Parkway and the access road and all the adjacent roads to development. It was the location of the drives and the stacking and the turning movements, because, you know, as you see in the queuing lanes on there, there is going to be movement that's going to be conflicting on there. And so we do have a concern about, you know, getting on the site and off the site. Now, the more we're stacking up is concerns of getting on the site and how it will affect the roadways that come through there. Now, there is going to be, whatever development goes in there, and they want to make this point, there is going to be traffic that's going to be on all the roads that we talked about with whatever development goes in there, and it's just the configuration of what's in there. So, I mean, that's why at the end we did, you know, support that, because we worked through some of the drive locations, you know, the right in, right out, and the access road. You know, if you look at the access road, that's kind of the least out of all of them, because it is one way, you know, to go in. But we are concerned about that. So that with that opening, Mr. Hood, if you have any others, items that you want to add for that.
I don't know if I would have much more to add, other than we spent a long time studying this. This has been before us before. The plan has changed since its first submittal. That driveway on Otter Creek has moved back to get out of the turn taper. It's now very, very close to the criteria we would use for an arterial street of 300 feet from the intersection. So certainly we're at the point where it's meeting our criteria on Otter Creek. On the little looping frontage, or the access road that goes from Bass Pro Parkway back down to the interstate frontage road, AHD has expressed some big concerns about that. That is entirely in their jurisdiction, entirely their call, and I'm not certain that driveway will be approved in the end.
Yep. Excuse me. So the one on the east side of the property, the Arkansas Highway Department will have jurisdiction over.
They do. That is entirely in their
Okay.
their right of way, and they have looked at it and they have expressed concern.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? If not, a motion would be in order.
Okay, Chairman, I motion that for approval for item A with staff recommendations.
You have the motion. If you're in favor of the motion, raise your hand. If you're opposed, two noes. Motion passes. Thank you.
For a second,
Pardon?
I don't think the motion was seconded.
I'm deaf. What is it?
Was there not a second?
Yeah.
I didn't hear a second.
Did anyone second the motion?
Okay.
Okay.
I second the motion.
Well, let's be sure.
Okay.
You have the motion. Is there a second? Thank you.
Seconded.
Is there a second?
Yes.
All in favor? If you're in favor of the project, raise your hand. And if you're not, thank you very much. Thank you, Doctor. Thank you on that item. Item 8, which is Brody Creek. I know there's a big crowd, and I'm glad you're here. The one thing I need everybody to understand is that each side gets 20 minutes. So a lot of cards. So if the first person speaks 17 minutes, not a lot of you are going to speak. So if you have any order on your side, if you got some leader or somebody wants to lead the charge, that's great. If not, we'll just take them in the order that we received them. The way it works is the applicant will have 20 minutes. He will lead off. He can either tell us about the project and then respond to you, or he can defer to you and respond back later. But each side gets 20 minutes, and then the commission will have questions and comments undoubtedly. So with that, if you'll take us through the item, please.
Item number 8, file Z-8503F, the Point at Brody Creek long form PRD, located west of Bowman Road between Olds Lane and West 36th Street. The developer of this project is Richardson Properties, 9800 Maumelle Boulevard in North Little Rock. The authorized agent on this is White Daters. The surveyor is also White Daters on this. This property is 73.949 acres. It is located within Ward 6. It is currently zoned R2 single-family residential, which would allow for single-family residences. It is proposed for multifamily residential, and O1 uses. A variance is also requested from the land alteration ordinance to allow for grading of future phases of the multifamily development with the development of the initial plan. The background on this property and for the zoning approval history on this, bear with me. I hope I get it correct on here. In October 2015, the Planning Commission denied a request to rezone 23 acres of a larger parcel from R2 single-family residential to a planned development residential for the construction of more than 400 multifamily housing units. An overall development plan for the parcel was outlined, including the completion of boundary street improvements to Bowman Road and a commitment for single-family residential development for the northern portion of the site. However, that request did not include the entire property of approximately 70 acres. There were no measures for staff to satisfactorily enforce the proposals put forward by the developer. A request was denied by the Board of Directors to rezone this 73-acre site from R2 to PDR for an overall development plan of the property in September 2016. This plan indicated the northern portion of 27.25 acres was to contain single-family detached homes. Multifamily development was shown on 23.45 acres with 408 units proposed. Floodway and open space would have taken up 11.75 acres of land. The remaining 11.75 acres of the site located near Bowman Road was shown to be O1 Quiet Office District uses. The Planning Commission reviewed this proposal on November 19, 2015 and recommended approval of the rezoning. During the public hearing before the Board of Directors on March 1st, 2016, the applicant made 3 amendments to the application. It was determined by the board that those were significant modifications, returned the item back to the Planning Commission for additional review and consideration. The Planning Commission heard the item with the proposed amendments on May 19th, 2016. The applicant provided to staff the 3 following amendments. Number 1 would be to contribute $100,000 toward the construction of a traffic signal or roundabout at the intersection of Brody Creek Trail and Bowman Road. These funds were to be available for 5 years following the approval of the PRD. The second amendment was to provide a 50-foot wide buffer along the northern boundary of the PRD. No trees would be removed from that buffer, but additional plant materials may be added as part of an approved landscape plan. The third amendment was the portion of the PRD shown as proposed residential would be developed as single-family residential with lot widths and home sizes similar to those in either the Brody Creek and or the Woodlands Edge developments. Condition 1 was opposed by staff as it did not cover the cost of a roundabout or the installation of a traffic signal. The applicant later amended the proposed condition number 1 to construct a single-lane roundabout including landscape and restoration of landscape within the right-of-way provided or when warranted and within 5 years of approval of the PRD. The developer would pay the City of Little Rock for the cost of constructing or construct a traffic signal. The constructed signal improvements consist of necessary poles, foundation, mast arms, signal heads, pedestrian poles, and heads for pedestrian crossings as needed, conduits, wiring, cabinet, controller, radio, video equipment, electrical service connection, and all incidental work related thereto. During the hearing, the Planning Commission requested the time frame the developer was willing to fund the roundabout or provide the funds for the traffic signal. In response, the developer committed to funding the improvements to South Bowman Road, including the roundabout or a traffic signal, when the need was met as determined by the city with the various phases of the proposed apartment development, or if the need for the improvements were not met by the final phase of the apartment construction, then the developer would place the cost of the improvements with the city in the form of in lieu payment and allow the funds to remain with the city for a period of 5 years from the date of completion of the final phase of the apartment development. The Planning Commission did recommend approval of this request, which, as noted before, was ultimately denied by the Board of Directors. The most recent action request on this property was in April of 2018. The Planning Commission reviewed and considered a request to rezone the property from R2 single-family residential to PRD, Planned Development Residential, for the development of the site with a mixed-use development composed of 21.75 acres of multifamily development, 11.75 acres of floodway open space buffer, 10.85 acres of mixed-use development with O1 quiet office district uses as the permitted uses, and 29.60 acres shown as residential non-multifamily. Staff recommended denial of this proposal. Several objectors spoke to the Planning Commission stating reasons they were opposed to the request. Among those reasons stated were lack of commitment for landscape buffers and boundary street improvements, existing traffic and additional traffic generated by the new multifamily units, and the shift away from single-family uses in the area. The applicant stated the developer sought to build a quality housing for future residents on the property. He added the city had imposed a year-long moratorium on multifamily development in the area to review the future land use plan, and after the study was completed, no changes were proposed to the future land use plan. He also referred to a study contracted by the city and completed by UALR, concluding multifamily residences were not a detriment to neighborhoods and did not increase area crime. The Commission did ask staff about their position on the previous proposal. Staff stated they were supportive of the previous proposal. However, there had been no appreciable change in the area since the Board of Directors denied the previous proposal, which contributed to the change in the recommendation for denial from the staff. Moreover, there were no proposed boundary street improvements to the abutting streets in conjunction with the multifamily development, and none were proposed until property adjacent to any boundary streets occurred. A unanimous recommendation for denial was made by the Planning Commission, which brings us to this current proposal, which would be 21.75 acres of multifamily development with 408 units, 11.75 acres of floodway buffer, 10.85 acres of mixed use with the allowed uses being the O1 district, and 29.6 acres of residential non-multifamily. As stated before, this is on South Bowman Road. It is a heavily wooded site. It is just north of the existing phase of Point at Brody Creek, which has 498 units. There are additional multifamily residential developments containing between 400 and 500 units across Bowman Road to the east, as well as a nursing home and the single-family subdivisions of the Sandpiper subdivision. Brody Creek subdivision is to the north. Woodlands Edge is to the west and northwest. Regarding Bowman Road, some improvements have been made to South Bowman Road. However, it largely functions as a two-lane roadway. As of when the staff report was compiled, we had received several phone calls and emails from nearby property owners, as well as provided those to the Commission for their consideration. The comments would be generally concerned about adding additional traffic to the current levels in the area. As required, notice was sent to all property owners within 200 feet of the site, as well as the John Barrow and Woodlands Edge neighborhood associations. This request was reviewed at the subdivision committee. After that, the applicant took those comments and concerns and provided a revised site plan back to staff. Primarily, this gave additional detail to the proposed multifamily development. This development would be constructed in 4 phases. There would be a buffer which would typically exceed more than 100 feet from the proposed multifamily buildings to the edge of the property which would be set aside for development of future residential uses, was provided on this plan. Dumpster locations and screening was indicated on the site plan. 890 parking spaces would be provided on the site. There would be 102 spaces in garage structures and 198 spaces in carports distributed around the property. The property was proposed to be vinyl coated steel fence would be proposed on the north and east sides of the multifamily development. The building heights were proposed at a maximum of 45 feet, and they would be a combination of hardy board and brick that would match the existing development in the point at Brody Creek apartment complex. The current proposal for residential development would be for minimum lot sizes conforming to the R2 district. At this time, they're not committing to any additional buffers between the residential subdivision and the subdivision to the north. However, it is possible for additional buffer area to be provided. Any development of this property would, of course, require the approval of a revised site plan through an amended PRD process. An emergency access drive would be constructed to Bowman Road to the south of the proposed multifamily development. All the vehicular access would be via the existing drive servicing the point at Brody Creek for the multifamily development that would be proposed. In regard to the land use plan, that this site does reflect low-density residential and medium-density residential, as well as open space for that. The low-density category suggests development of single-family residences at densities of no more than 6 dwelling units per acre. The residential medium density allows for broader range of housing types, which would include single-family, detached, single-family attached, duplex townhomes, multifamily patio garden homes. This density would be typically between 6 and 12 dwelling units per acre. Public Works staff indicated that this proposal is substantially identical to the previous application. No additional information was provided to supplement the application. Wrapping all of this up, staff recommends denial of this application. Continues to have been no appreciable change in the area since the previous denial. Furthermore, the lack of boundary street improvements in conjunction with the multifamily development and the specificity for the majority of the parcel abutting the multifamily neighborhood to the north and Bowman Road do not provide staff with a clear and compelling vision for the development compatible with surrounding properties and the uses in the area.
Thank you. Let me just ask you one question after reading all that. Are there single-family houses in this proposal?
There are not specifically.
Yes or no?
With this, no, not specifically.
Is there any roundabout or any off-site improvements?
No.
Thank you. Okay, would the applicant care to address the commission? And you'll have up to 20 minutes. And you can take it all now, or you can say something, listen to them, and come back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
My name is David Vandergriff, and I'm with the law firm of Quattlebaum, Grooms and Toll, and we represent the developer. Also here representing the developer with me today is Tim Daters of White Daters, who is the engineer and agent for the developer. And generally speaking, we agree with the staff's analysis. We, of course, disagree with the staff's recommendation that the application be denied. We think that the plan as presented is a reasonable plan based on current land use in the area. And with that, Mr. Chairman, we will reserve the balance of our time to respond to questions and any comments of the other speakers.
Thank you. I had two cards from two people who did not want to speak, but I'll recognize that Reed Mitchell and Susan Berry both opposed the project but did not care to speak. Is there any organization, or shall I just take the cards as they came? Hearing nothing, Alvin Weintraub.
Here.
You want to speak?
Yes, sir.
There you go.
Chairman. I'm Alvin Weintraub. I live in Woodlands Edge, members of the commission. My wife is the president of the POA in Woodlands Edge. I think Mr. Koenig received a letter from her stating that it was a unanimous decision, complete vote of opposing the improving or the building of multifamily units on Bowman Road. This was presented to us several years ago, as he read, and he promised us the moon. He was going to do this, that, and the other, and then it never fell through. But we were opposed from all of that from the beginning. He has clear cut it. I don't know if all of y'all were on the board 2-3 years ago when this was brought up, but Mr. Richardson has clear cut that land across the street from his Point West, took out every single tree. On Bowman Road alone, and I will say, y'all familiar with Bowman Road, right? Okay. You've got the Fontainebleau Apartments, 240 apartments. Bowman Point, which they're building right now, which he clear-cut every single tree on that property. 217 and another 200 and some odd more units are going to be built. The Point of Brody Creek, his first building, has 503 apartments. Now, that's just on Bowman Road. You go to Canis, you got the Fitzroy, which you all voted to approve that, and that's up near Kroger and the Trampoline Place. That's got 294 units. McKenzie Place across from Valero and Cooper Orbit, 168 units. Rowan, right behind Valero, 72 units. And then on Cooper Orbit, you got the Landmark. Those apartments down there are 196. In total, you got close to 2,000 apartments within less than 2.5 miles of one another. Bowman Road, and this is the board brought this up when the Mayor Stodla was there. Bowman Road will never have the infrastructure of being a 4-lane road because unless it's going to be eminent domain, you're going to have to take out houses. You can do it from Colonel Glenn all the way up to where he's got the Point West. Yeah, you could probably do that 4 lanes, but you can't go any farther. The infrastructure from Shackelford to Gamble, what they're working on right now, that infrastructure, they're just now starting it. Gas lines, water lines, whatever they're having to put in. We're facing a major traffic problem on Canis Road. You open up Bowman, they're going to open up, out of this new project here, they would open up a street from his back area of this new project going through Woodlands Edge. There's only 2 entrances to Woodlands Edge. One on Brody Creek coming in from Bowman, and the other one empties out on Canis Road near Cooper Orbit. There's only 2, one way in and one way out. And if you open up this monstrosity and you get 800 and something cars or parking areas in there, everybody's going to be cutting through Brody Creek and everybody's going to be cutting through Woodlands Edge. Now, I know there may be more eloquent speakers out here, but I think we all have the same idea in mind. We don't need additional apartments, and we sure don't need additional traffic. I'm not bringing up crime. I don't think that's a problem. I'm bringing up the fact that we got too many apartments in this area as it is. And I know Mr. Berry said a couple of years ago he was in favor of the apartments, that we needed it. But once you close down an old apartment, everybody's going to move to the new apartments. Or when you build a new apartment, people leave the old and go to the new. Then you're left with apartments that are just sitting there. But just to reiterate, Woodlands Edge, unanimous vote against this project. And that's from the board. And as you can see, we're not at a football game. People in red are supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Joanne Roush? Did I say that right?
She said just an opposed.
William Roush?
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, thank you for this opportunity. I'm Bill Roush, and I live in Woodlands Edge, and I'm very much opposed to the project. And I don't know who came up with the red, but if you see the sea of red back here, I'm not sure if it represents the color that we all see when we go past this monstrosity, or if it's the universally recognized color or symbol for stop, please just stop. That's what we're wearing this color for today, to show our unanimous support for it. Just a couple of comments, and Alvin, I don't know if anybody here is eloquent as you. You did an awesome job, and I think you did a good job of explaining our position. We're not here because we feel somehow entitled or that we're privileged. We're here because we just want to protect our quality of life. And I think no one in this room would oppose one basic fact, that population density is inversely proportional to quality of life. And that's exactly what we're looking at here with this monstrosity. If you drive past there now, that denuded property, which it looks to us like it's a construction project on steroids that's been totally denuded, this quality of life issue becomes a real issue when you look at this red zone area that's marked out here. You take all the total area that's appears to be on the map right now for the existing. This is practically double that. We already know the numbers. That little horn that goes around is going to dump eventually traffic into our neighborhood. I know when I go down to our stop sign now on that one way out Alvin spoke about, that I take my milk and Cheerios with me and just wait so I can have my breakfast, because I'm not getting out. I'm just not. It's not going to come. If he ever coughs up the money for the roundabout, Bowman has the right of way. And roundabouts work when traffic is intermittent or normal, but when it's heavy, Bowman traffic's going to always have that right of way. So I haven't gained nothing. I approached the roundabout. I'm still dead in the water. I can't move. We did look at some of the existing clusters back in the day when apartments were built in 2 and 150 to 180 clusters. Nothing has 2,200 units in one cluster impinging on it. Regardless of what the UALR study says, there's no, how was it worded, no detriment. Not unless you live there, then that detriment becomes real. And we just want to protect our quality of life and that thing we've been paying on all of our lives, our mortgages, the largest investment we have. Who knows? I think that's all that I had on my little scribble sheet here. You mentioned about the traffic being a booger. I think we've elevated our traffic to snot level because it's just not going to work. The infrastructure is going to get beat to death by people behind me, but yeah, we're there. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. I didn't think the red was for the football team. Calvin Biggers.
I want to clearly align myself with if you look at that boat with the hook, where it has an R2 written there, that's my house. My wife and I just moved on the left, and see, Scott, you looking there, where that R2 goes, that last little house, that's me. I'm totally for denying this application. I believe that the cars that will come are going to come, but they don't need to be funneled into this. What someone left out at Colonel Glenn and Bowman, Baptist Hospital College exist. There were 705 cars parked there today at 2 o'clock. That's just one day of the Baptist College. I would like to say 2 points of order. This gentleman, Alex Koning, gave me an hour and a half a week ago with all the previous applications, answered several phone calls, and I think he's a great example of a public servant for the city of Little Rock. I'd like to yield the rest of my time to Mrs. Shipley, who's perhaps our best spokesman, if that's possible.
If that's okay with Valita Biggers, who's next?
She's Vita's at home.
Okay.
Like I got voted off the island. So I'm Jamie Shipley. I live in Woodlands Edge, and I think I spoke with you all last year. Thanks for having us again and allowing us this opportunity. They might say that I'm an eloquent speaker, but I say that they made all the points that we wanted to make. There are way too many apartments on Bowman and Canis. If you go a little bit further, there are additional apartments, Capitol Hill, et cetera. So we're pretty much surrounded by them in what used to be single-family homes. There are 2-lane roads on Bowman and on Canis. Canis is about to be under construction, so the traffic there is actually going to get worse. If you try to make a left-hand turn out of Bowman or Canis at any time of the day, it's very difficult. I'll tell you, I was coming back from Target day before yesterday at 5 o'clock, and the traffic trying to go south on Bowman was backed up all the way to the light at Chenal. So that's 3 lights that you have to go through before you can even get on to the part of Bowman where we all are trying to get to our homes. So that makes it very difficult. We see cars pull out in front of cars all the time. There are multiple accidents on the road. It's really a safety issue. I don't think at this point anyone's mentioned that 2-lane bridge on Bowman. So that's another difficulty that would be incurred if you tried to even increase the size of the road there. There are also no shoulders on Bowman. So if there's an accident, there's no way around. If there's an emergency vehicle that needs to get through, it's just impossible. So there's just a few other things to consider. The cut-through traffic is a problem. Woodlands Edge and Brody Creek have a lot of children. One of the reasons we all live there is that there's a lot of green space. There are people out walking our trails, walking our streets. And we've seen a lot of safety concerns with people not understanding the roundabouts, going through them backwards because they think they're saving time. People traveling at high rates of speed, including through the areas where our park is. So there's a safety concern for our children from that perspective as well. And with that, I think I will yield in case anyone else wants to speak. Thank you.
Dan Veach.
Thank you, Board. I'd like to just to say a few words about the apartments. And the City of Little Rock spent a lot of money and time coming up with a land use plan. And the Planning Commission, as you know, altered this master plan by allowing the Richardson properties to build at the apartments at Point Brody. And then about a year later or so, they allowed the Richardson properties to build at Bowman's Point. And now the Richardson properties are asking to change the zoning again and build apartments at 300 Bowman Road, as we've all talked about. If this is allowed, and it was brought up by the attorney for Mr. Richardson, I'll bet that after the apartments are built, Richardson's properties will again ask to be allowed to build another line of apartments beside the ones they just built, and this is going to go on, perhaps up until they get to Olds Road, trying to get changes in the zoning. And their argument to be allowed to build more apartments will be, well, this is what the land use is here. And we've got all these apartments already. Why not? That's the way it is. But it's not the way it always was. So the Planning Commission can stop this influx of apartments into our neighborhood. The Woodlands Edge and Brody Creek communities are unique, and we'd like the Planning Commission to keep our neighborhood residential. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer McClellan.
I'm opposed. I don't need to speak, but I would like to hear from
Thank you.
POA. Sorry. I'm opposed, but I don't need to speak, but I would like to hear from our POA representative who didn't get her card turned in, Elizabeth Wall. Is that okay?
That'd be at the chair's discretion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Brevity.
I'm Elizabeth Wall, and I'm on the board of the Brody Creek POA, and I just wanted to say on behalf of all of our board members, we are unanimously opposed to the rezoning. That's all I need to say.
How many members on your board?
We have 5.
5, and how
POA members? Oh, how, POA members? I don't know, we have 80-something houses, but I don't know how many members total, 86 houses. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa Smith.
Hi, I'm Melissa Smith. I also do not, I am strongly opposed and also would like to request for someone who came in late to speak from Brody Creek neighborhood. Ann?
I'm gonna let people who fill out the cards, and if
Okay.
there's time left.
Well, I would like to just make one thing. Someone said it's not about crime. I don't have the statistics with me. I came straight from work. The first murder of this year occurred at the one of the apartments over on Canis. If you all can look that up, but the first murder of the year was a murder at those apartments. We also have, some of us have some statistics about the high number of calls that the police get to Richardson's apartments. I know that my Ring doorbell, I get to ride her bicycle out in the neighborhood. And I agree with what others have said, that once he gets a foothold in and changes the coding or the R2, then there will be no little patio homes. It'll be all apartments. And to have more than 2,000 apartments within a 2-mile area, that's just not right. That is not, it needs to be stopped. And there's also no option, no way a roundabout would ever work in that curve. You're going down a curve on Bowman, and that's not a foreseeable option. I know that's not on the board now, but just if you're thinking about that in the future, that is not an option. And I also have a concern where that hook is with the boat, that he's going to branch that out and connect it right into Woodland's Edge. And that would be a huge mistake. Thank you very much. I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you, Stephen Parker.
I wasn't going to speak, but I am going to just say one thing real quick. We moved in, my wife and family and I, my 3-year-old daughter, about a year ago. We're on Sweetgrass Road, comes right down the edge there. Woodland's Edge is a great community for us because they've preserved the natural landscape around the homes. They've found a way to incorporate residential and preserve the natural state, Arkansas. And so I get to take my 3-year-old for walks and through the trails that they've created in the area, around the lake. I get to point out different birds in the area, maybe a red cockaded woodpecker. I know that they're endangered. Might have seen one or two of those. But in all honesty, everybody's brought up the right questions regarding traffic, but I haven't heard anything about environmental impact surveys or other things that might affect our neighborhood, as well as be a concern for other agencies within the state. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you for your time.
This nice lady doesn't want to speak, but wants to note her opposition. Sharon Boehm. I can't do the last name, I'm sorry. But she raised her hand. She's opposed to it. Kay Mitchell.
She says she opposes. She just said she opposes.
Okay. You wanted the one, Ms. Smith, you wanted, got.
Oh, yes, Ann, would you like to speak?
And that's all, after this nice lady, that's all the cards.
Most of all, I think we need to stop meeting like this. This is deja vu all over again. Thank you all so much. You have a big job, and we know that you do. You've heard so many remarks that I could just second, but let me take it just a little bit further. I vehemently, my family and I, who are in the audience, oppose approval for all the good reasons that you've heard. But I'd like to stretch it out just a little bit more. I know from having participated in committees recently about some concerns that the mayor and others have, that we need the property tax, but not to the extent that we forget the whole of our community, not just a part of it. We need the property tax to pay for more roads. Why do we need more roads? Because we have succumbed for 30 pieces of silver to the temptation of urban sprawl. I grew up between Arkansas and Southern California, and I can tell you that I really know what sprawl looks like. This is a dangerous precedent that we're setting. We know that Bowman was built as just a little 2-lane country road, and it still is. The other day when I was heading home to the south, as I crossed through the intersection of Canis and Bowman, I thought, wow, that's a big line of traffic trying to get into the intersection. So I counted as I went home, 76 cars at 4:30 in the afternoon trying to get through that intersection. We need a new paradigm. I believe that we need a new motto, and we need to make sure that our new developers understand that what we need to be about is that home places must be placed near workplaces. We can't stand the urban sprawl. We're already there dangerously. This is a place to stop it and teach developers a different way of life. Thank you so much for listening to us.
Thank you. Thank you. Would the developer care to address any of those? It's your turn.
No, thank you.
Do what?
No, thank you.
No? Commissioners?
I do. I have a comment.
Commissioners, any questions?
I do.
Okay.
The gentleman that came up, your wife is part of the POA. She's president of POA.
Yes, ma'am.
Would you happen to know how many members are in the POA for Woodland Edge, is it?
Well, there were 600, almost 700 homes in Woodland's Edge.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Then you got the woods, and there's 64 homes in the woods, so there's probably a little over 700.
If I may, excuse me for a minute, if I may remind everybody, we videotape all this, and it's live, and to really, when you get passed away from the mic, you can't hardly hear it. So if you would please, come up in front of the mic, that would really help us so we can hear everything.
Okay, I'm Alvin Weintraub, live in Woodland's Edge. There's over 670 homes in Woodland's Edge. You've got another 64 in the woods, which is the private area. When you couldn't pull in off Canis and go in, it's gated.
Mm-hmm.
So those are gated. But the board itself unanimously voted against this. And one thing I was going to say, Richardson, when he bought this property, he knew darn well it was only for single home families. He bought it from a little old lady up there for a couple of $1 million, okay? He could have put a provision in there when he bought it. I'll buy this property only if I can get it rezoned. Well, he didn't do that. He knew darn well what he was doing when he bought it. And, he's got his little nest egg set up across the street in Bowman, both places. And we like the pristine area of that. I'm through. Sorry.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, I was just asking because for me, I see a large representation here of the community and the POA's count and 80 from her POA. And I personally, some time ago, might have been a year or two, was coming down the famous Canis intersection, and there was some kind of accident that was going on maybe further up, and the fire trucks and emergency response units couldn't get through, and the cars had to go in the ditch. So that's what comes to mind for me. So, I mean, for me, it's a safety issue, it's a crowding issue, it's a monopoly issue. And, it's just 2,000 units in a 2-mile stretch. I just feel like it's not necessary. So for those reasons, I'm going to not be in favor of this. That's just me.
Any other commissioners?
I got two. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of questions for staff because I got confused somewhere along the way. Okay, there was talk about a red light, a traffic signal, and a roundabout. I cannot for the life of me figure out where those would go. What are y'all talking about when you say you're wanting a traffic signal and a
If
roundabout.
you can look at the monitor there,
Yep.
that's right around that arrow is where that is. Brody Creek Trail would be the entrance into the Brody Creek neighborhood there.
Oh, the entrance to Brody Creek. Okay.
Correct.
All right. A roundabout with Brody Creek and Bowman.
That has nothing to do with this project.
Yeah, I know. I guess that's why I'm asking the question. Why does the traffic signal there, and your desire to get $100,000 to build that?
That was a part of a previous application. It's
Okay,
not a part
all
of
right.
this application.
Okay. Question number 2. I believe that our residents are worried that the finger of land that goes up on the extreme western edge of this, that goes up along the floodway, somehow the developer is going to connect that to their neighborhood. That can't happen, correct? He does not have the right to build a road and connect it to an existing city. That would be a...
Ralph Davis said that. He said it is connected.
There's a road that
Okay, I guess
Okay.
maybe I'm asking. Maybe I'm
I think he's
asking
asking
Mike
staff, but
Hood.
thank
Yeah. Yeah. Is there a?
Mr. Hood, if you'd please come up and address that. We do, Walter, if you pull up the map of that so that they can kind of see some of the layout.
Now, there was a question I wasn't completely ready for, but yes, they could connect that. It appears to be adjacent to the floodway in the floodplain area, and so there could be a permit gotten to fill in the floodplain, build a road, and make that connection. I don't know why they'd want to do that. Maybe ultimately that would give them a second entrance for the single-family development along that side, because they do have to have more than one way in and out once you get too many rooftops.
That's a
But so
process.
far, there's no
Yeah.
drawing been shown to us.
That's a request and a process, not just at the discretion of the landowner.
Yes.
Right. Okay.
Dr. Benton?
Yes, I've been driving up and down Canis Road since 1991 when I built a home out in Canal Valley. And I agree that safety, I believe, is the largest issue. I would hate to be a first responder trying to get somebody with a medical emergency. You won't hardly make it. It's like we put the cart before the horse. We have all of these units built down Canis Road, but the road is 2-lane. And the ingress, egress idea, I just find it really difficult to justify building more units until we make sure that the ability to navigate that stretch of road and those communities is improved. For that reason, I'm going to vote against it.
Okay. Two questions.
Mr. Ramon.
The first question is for staff, and I think Mr. Veach raised this issue, and it struck a chord with me, which is, this is the land use, it's the perspective, or at least that is perceived to be the argument that will be made. And I've heard that same argument in the past to sort of reject a proposed use in the sense that it's not consistent with the character of the neighborhood, it's not something that would fit within it, but it seems to me, from what I'm hearing today, is that actually the character of the neighborhood has changed. And so my question is, when you evaluate this application, how do you fit the proposed development into what the character of the neighborhood is now? I mean, do you say the character is such that it would be appropriate, or the character is such that it is not appropriate because it's single-family home? I don't know how to evaluate it.
So we took this from the standpoint of we did look at what the land use plan would be for the medium and the low density single family. Or I'm sorry, not single. The low density, which would be single family, and the medium density, which would allow for additional density as to what is on the land use plan. Where we landed on this really is that the application that was presented to us was not substantially any different than what was proposed before, and there have not been any changes that would in the area specifically regarding improvements to the road system, the transportation system, that would lead us to say that the area, the infrastructure could support any additional units. or the units that are being proposed at this time, as well as the uncertainty around the single-family uses that would be proposed for the northern portion of that. There just isn't enough there for us to be comfortable in making a recommendation that would be a change to what the land use plan.
So to condense that, maybe it could be within the character, but the plan itself is not definite enough for you to make that call?
I wouldn't say it could be I wouldn't say at this point in time it is not in character with the area.
Okay.
On there, I think that but that I don't also want to get us either trapped into or going down that discussion of if we've established exactly if there is a tipping point where we of the number of units in there or the type of housing, the type of development in there, but just based upon the area as it currently is served by transportation infrastructure, cannot support. We as staff felt we could not support that additional density.
Okay. And my second question, Mr. Vandergriff, I'm going to put you on the spot for a second. Almost everyone that has come to the podium has mentioned essentially the same thing, which is that this area cannot support this development as proposed. And so I have to believe that the developer has considered that and come to some conclusion. So is there anything you can tell us to speak to that? Do you agree? Do you disagree? What is the perspective of the developer?
Commissioner Ramon, my name is Tim Daters. I'm an engineer with White Daters and Associates. If you can put the land use plan up, Walter. When this application first came through the Planning Commission in 2015, 2016, this was the existing land use plan. We had begun development in Brody Creek, the apartment development below this. Approximately one half of this site, or roughly 60 acres, probably 25 to 30 acres of this site, is zoned residential medium density, which is somewhere around 6 to 12 units per acre. And when you've got roughly 20 or 30 acres that are zoned MF12, then you're up somewhere around, at 20 acres, you're up around 240 apartment units. That proposal, with all the additional things that the developer had agreed to do, was actually approved by the Planning Commission in 2016. So it seemed like a good idea at one point in time. The developer, subsequent to that, the city board did not approve the recommendation. And in that length of time, and subsequent to that, too, the city did the overall study of that area for multifamily. The city did not come back and make any recommendation that this land use should be changed. In other words, they didn't come back and say after that study this land use should be lowered down to R2. They left it at residential medium density. So that's the progress of the application. The streets in the area, the additional improvements that were proposed as an inducement to help accommodate the increased traffic at that point in time. So that the application has been relatively consistent. The overall development pattern in the area has changed. There's been very little improvement to Bowman Road in the subsequent years.
Well, okay.
Does
that mean you don't disagree with the concept that is very trafficky and this will make it worse?
Well, I think that this is a 70-some acre parcel which will, in all likelihood, develop at some point in time. It's going to develop in some manner and form. The proposal that we had made had a large portion of it developing as residential density, where we said the lot sizes will conform with the standard residential lots. And so there was a mix there. We also had a significant amount of space on the original plan for open space and things like that. So it's the same application. We're definitely at a different point in time.
There is an interesting perspective that we're talking about. If you look at it on a larger basis, I know you guys are affected, and that's why you wore red. But the city of Little Rock, if it's going to continue to grow, the city of Little Rock doesn't build roads. Now, occasionally they'll build a big deal like Canis, which was announced under Stodler's first term, and it takes a long time to build the roads. But the $64 question is, do you build the road? Do you build the road and then wait on demand? Or do you build the apartments and create the demand and then build the road? And I don't have an answer for that. I'm just saying that's an interesting question that keeps coming up in virtually every discussion we have, because the city needs to fix Bowman Road. Now, whether adding more traffic to Bowman makes that come earlier or not, I don't know. Now, having said that, anybody else? Okay.
I have a question for staff and also a comment before we vote. And it's quite the long arc of history with this application and long and windy road. I'm trying to figure out, did the applicant ever agree to the boundary improvements that the staff and city had asked? Because there was a lot of back and forth on that, and I didn't quite understand where that landed. Mr. Hood, could you address that?
The way I understand what's before you today is there'll be a limited amount of boundary improvements on that small frontage where the apartments are proposed. And then there's a large portion of that whole 79-acre site that's nothing before us today as far as proposals for how a subdivision would lay out or other stuff. That would be put off for the future for those boundary street improvements to be done.
Okay.
So a small part of that will be done, and a bunch of it will wait till later when it does develop.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hood. My comments, and I wish the applicant, Mr. Richardson, were here, because I would be glad to say this to him again. I was on the commission when this was voted in 2015, and it really feels like Groundhog Day. It keeps coming back, and unlike Bill Murray, who kind of learned from his experience to win the heart of his romantic interest, I don't think the applicant has learned and is going to get his girl on this. Mr. Weintraub drug my name into this as voting for the original application, and here's what I'm going to say, that I think the applicant has abused this process without any good faith, and he keeps coming back, and I really feel the nature of development out here has changed. There's a great discussion about suburban growth and many housing choices, not just single family, where not only people who have homes near work, but professional and people who service you can also have housing choices. Now, the Holy Spirit for that discussion has left the room for this application, because it's y'all have quite a concentration of apartments. So I'm not going to press that. I will not vote for this application. I feel like its time has come and gone.
All right. I believe a motion would be.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, I have just one question, just clarity from the community representatives. Are you all opposed to anything coming in this area, or just only the apartment complexes? If I could get one person to come to the mic to answer that for me. Thank you.
Mr. Brooks, I think everybody in here is not opposed to development. They're opposed to the multifamily part of it. Single family, which is zoned for, we wouldn't have a problem with it. If he had bought it for that purpose in mind only, we couldn't do anything about it, because that's what it's zoned for. Now, I'm not going to go any farther, but no, to answer your question, single family would be the way to go.
All right. One more.
I have one quick question for staff. If by chance this were to pass and this was rezoned, he could build the current development and continue to build. Is that correct? Because that whole area, it would be rezoned.
Mr. Thomas, this is a planned development, so what you're looking at is the application before you as you see it. Any revision of that will come before the process through, and it will go to the board, for the final say. So the answer is the development as you see, the layout, Yes. Any additional, no.
I think a motion would be in order.
Chairman LaTour, I move that we, for approval of item Z 8503, including all staff comments and conditions, accept the recommendation of denial.
You have a motion, is there a second? Who did it? Good. Been moved and seconded. If you're in favor of this project, raise your hand. If you're not, raise your hand. Is there any other business to come before us? Citizen communication. Hearing nothing, we're adjourned.